My name is Golda Offenheim. I'm a production coordinator, and that's the position I held on Dune, all 18 months of it.
Okay, and exactly does that entail?
I suppose the best way you can say is general nursemaid to the unit and the artists, etc.
Okay, so it covers quite a broad spectrum of...
Yes. Yes, it does. Do you want to know more about it?
Yeah, please, yeah.
Well, first of all, you have to arrange for everyone to travel to wherever we're going. Then you have to see that they have cars to get to the airport at both ends. Then you have to see that they have accommodation. And then Joe Bloggs will find out that Mark next door's got a bigger room and he doesn't like it, so you have to either try to switch or get a room the same size. And it's generally looking after the unit and getting the floor unit ready for shooting. To see that they've got all the cameras and all the sound and all the props and everything else.
Okay, so before, had you done a job as big as Dune prior to Dune?
Yes, many.
Okay, so were you daunted at all by the prospect of doing
Not the slightest scrap.
Okay, despite the fact that it was in Mexico and all this stuff?
I'd worked on films like Fiddler on the Roof, and I was with MGM for 7 years, and I worked on all their horse operas, several of them. I'm quite used to big films.
Okay, so what would you say are the what personal characteristics are imperative to do the job that you do?
Try to keep your temper when all about are losing theirs. To know what you're doing and to be as helpful as you possibly can. And I really do think it's important not to lose your temper.
Okay, so can you tell me any of the specific problems that you had to deal with on Dune? I'd imagine there were a few.
Have you ever tried filming in Mexico? Nowadays, I believe it's easy, but don't forget, this was 20 years ago, and we had a great many problems. Some of which I'm not prepared to talk about, of course. Now, for instance, our second unit cameraman had a terribly, terribly serious accident. We thought he was going to die. He was shooting at night and he stepped back and he then wanted to go a bit further, but there was a sheer drop and he dropped goodness knows how many feet. He was taken to the local hospital. This was all in the middle of the night. It happened about midnight, and about 2 o'clock I was woken up. Raffaella and I were woken up, and we met downstairs and went to the hospital and immediately got him moved to another hospital, ABC, which was much better, the American-British hospital in Mexico. And by some miracle, 6 weeks later, he was back at work. That was Jimmy Davis that happened to.
Wow, so what actually happened to him?
He, I think, broke about 10 bones in his body. And he was absolutely marvellous about it. His wife had arrived the previous day, and she was there, fortunately. And we brought in specialists from all over the place to see him. And he recovered remarkably quickly, 6 weeks. It was wonderful.
Okay, so how did that affect the schedule? Did that throw things at all? Or?
Oh, yes. Most things affected the schedule, come to think of it. There were a lot of difficulties. I mean, we were at Churubusco Studio, as you probably know, and they weren't used to quite such large films with the number of very big stars that we had. And even those who weren't big stars thought, some of them thought they were. I shouldn't have said that, should I? But there were difficulties all around in that, well, let's put it this way, it was one of the first films to be made, a big film, foreign film, to be made in Mexico. And you are reliant a lot on, we brought in all our unit with us, 2 units, but you're very reliant on the local people as well, and they truly had to be taught what to do. And I think we managed very well. I mean, I know that I taught them all how to do a schedule and to read a schedule. Obviously, insist on calling it schedule. And they also learnt how to do so many things, how to break down a script. And they're awfully good now. Today, you can find some excellent people in Mexico, and it's because of what we taught them, I think.
Great. So, when you took everything over with you, all of your own kit and people, apart from the locals?
Every single thing we took over, everything.
And were there problems with customs at all?
That's where Airport Harry came in. Airport Harry, of course, was a Mexican who spoke excellent, somewhat fractured English. Sort of, not all the words meant quite what he was saying, but he was absolutely great. He got us all through, and everything that we took over eventually got through. That was going into the country. It was rather a different story going out of the country. It was a little more difficult.
Can you elaborate at all on that?
Yes, we lost one of our buses that we were going to send to El Paso, but we knew we were going to, and I'm not prepared to say anything more than that.
Okay, you lost a bus.
It's still running around Mexico.
And Airport Harry couldn't get it back?
We knew it was going to get lost. I knew it was going to get lost.
Okay. I won't press you on this.
No, please don't.
So apart from the Airport Harrys, were the Mexican authorities in general cooperative?
After a time, yes. Yes, they were, basically. There were obviously problems with some of the stuff that came in. For instance, one of the hairdressers walked in with a head with the hair on, of course, and that caused quite a problem because it looked so lifelike, I can't tell you. Yes, that was a problem, but it only took a day or two to sort out. Basically, it was good.
So they actually thought you were importing heads?
They thought we had the rest of the body somewhere else, I think, I'm not certain.
Okay. Now, what did you actually, in Churubusco, how did you change? How has the landscape changed? I mean, was it like a miniature city coming in and taking over?
Oh, yes. I think it was. I do think it was. We had to take every single thing in, down to the nuts and bolts and everything. We also had the studio. We furnished the studio. So every single thing that we had to take in. It all had to be listed. Every single item was listed, every nut and bolt. And so we had all the offices to do, all the sets to do. How Tony Masters managed, I really don't know, but he did, and they were wonderful sets, absolutely marvellous. But it was difficult. I think after the first few weeks, it did become easier because they got used to us and we knew what to do as well. We'd learnt that as well the hard way.
And I presume they'd experienced nothing like this before in their lives. I mean, it was
Oh no, they'd never had anything like this.
Okay. So where did everyone live during the shoot?
We were all at hotels. We were we were at a place called Suites Amberes, which is in the Zona Rosa, which is right in the middle of Mexico. We all had our own apartments there, and that's quite another story. Thinking back, you know what it's like. After 20 years, you forget all about the dreadful things that happened. You only remember the really good things. And we had such a lot of fun there, I can't tell you. It was wonderful.
How long were you actually all out there for?
I was out there for 18 months. I think the unit was there for almost a year. I think it was 11 or 12 months, because when we'd finished the main shooting, there was that damned worm. The worm to finish as well. Carlo Rambaldi and all that sort of thing. You're making me think of things that I haven't thought of for the last 20 years. I wanted to forget.
So what happened with the worm?
Well, have you seen the film?
Yes, I've watched it about 3 times over the last 3 days and I still don't know what's going on.
Well, I worked on it for 18 months and I'm pretty much in the same position. I thought the worm was horrible. I really did. And we had all sorts of sections of it, of course, but we also had the full thing. Freddie Francis will be able to tell you a great deal more about it than I can, but I thought it was a hideous thing. I mean, it was done, as you know, by Carlo Rambaldi, who had done E.T., and that was a sweet little thing, the little thing in E.T. The worm wasn't. There was nothing affectionate about it at all, as far as I could see, nothing at all. And it was very difficult shooting, as I'm sure Freddie would tell you.
Okay, so it's so I can, when I talk to him about it, I'll know a bit more. But can you just tell me, it was obviously a lot of it was shot in miniature, and some was shot actual size. Is that correct?
Some would, now, as I recall, some was shot but as far as I can recall, it was shot, portions were shot of the whole, and then also the whole, yes, it was done in the actual size as well, as I recall. My memory is not as good as it used to be.
So what kind of size are we talking about? Was this gigantic?
Oh, it was gigantic, yes. It really was, huge. I'm trying, somewhere or other, I've got a note of the sizes involved, but I really can't remember. It was huge.
Okay. So when you were all living together for this long period,
yes.
How did it go? Was there a camaraderie?
That was the thing about any film on which you work that has Raffaella with you. There was the greatest camaraderie in the world. There really and truly was. She is an astonishing person. She really is. And people will work their guts off because she's doing the same thing. She never expects anyone to do anything that she won't do herself. And she works just as long hours as the rest of us. And we were in these flats of our own, and we would very often cook and have our meals, our evening meal together, about 10 or 11 o'clock at night. Very Spanish. And several of us would do Tony Masters and all of them, always David Lynch. And if by any chance one night we hadn't had it, then about 3 o'clock in the morning, when I'd just gone to sleep, David come banging at the door and say, "Where's my food? Where's my food?" And idiot I am, I'd get up and give it to him. We had a wonderful friendship between all of us. We really did. And you know the way that nowadays it's a lot, I did this, I did that. In those days it was always we did it. And it was so much better, really it was.
Yeah. So David, what was your, was this the first time you'd worked with David Lynch?
With David Lynch, yes.
And what were your first impressions of him?
Oh, that's a nice lad, I thought. Don't forget I'm very old. And he was. I mean, David is absolutely brilliant. He really is. He is a genius. He's a crackpot, but he's a genius. He's very kinky, shall we say? No, that's not the right word, is it? I'm terribly fond of him. I really am. I love him dearly. And he's got his own method of doing things. And if the producer says, "No, that's not possible," you'll find somehow 3 days later that not only is it possible, it's already been done. You know? He's great that way.
Okay, so he's obviously unconventional. I mean, from all his films.
That's the word I couldn't find. Yes.
But what would you say? There's anything about him that is his specific skill? Why would you say he's been such a successful and become such a cult director?
Well, he is wonderful with actors, absolutely marvellous with the artists, and he knows in his head he's got worked out everything that he wants to do. He doesn't always tell other people, like the production people, what it is he wants to do or is in fact going to do, but he really is a genius.
Okay, and talking of the actors, were you on set most of the time?
I was on set quite a bit of the time.
So how did you witness his relationships with the actors, and how was it?
It was absolutely great. It truly was. And they listened to him, and Kyle and Francesca. And of course, Raffaella's mother was in the film as well, Silvana Mangano, the late, a darling lady. And the actors responded to him. It was very good to see. They really did, and they really listened to him and loved him.
Okay, so there were no great big huffs or battles of egos or any of this kind of stuff going on?
Not with the director. There might have been one or two among the actors. Do you mind if I don't talk about that?
No, sure. Okay. Now, being that this was David Lynch's first really big budget Hollywood movie, how do you think he dealt with it?
In hindsight, at the time, I thought remarkably well. In hindsight, I know that there were lots of things that shouldn't have happened that did happen. How can I put this? There are a great many things that are in a director's mind which are only going to, will obviously end up on the cutting room floor. And if he could be stopped from doing them in the first place, it would be great, but you couldn't do that with David. He knew what he wanted and did it. Sometimes, very often, he was right.
So did that kind of slightly maverick attitude, did you have the impression that angered the money people? Were there issues going on?
I could never understand how the money people could let us all get away with it. But then, who was I to say? I really couldn't. I mean, there was a great deal, I think. But there is in every film, isn't there?
What's that? A great deal.
A great deal of wastage.
Right. In terms of being experimental and...
Well, if they'd look at the script and truly look at the script and find out that, no, that really won't go, it really won't go in at all. If they could do that at the beginning instead of after it's been shot very expensively, it would be great.
That does seem to kind of make sense, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Yeah. Yes, I can relate to that one. So his vision, David Lynch's vision, did it seem like from the beginning he knew what he wanted?
Yes, it did. And you see, for me, and this is for me only, the great thing against Dune was that there was no humour in it. I can't remember even smiling once, and it needed humour, and there wasn't any at all. I mean, Kyle was great, Francesca was great, all the artists were very good indeed. I mean, Sting was only in a very small part, but he was very good indeed. But they needed some humour, and there wasn't any, in my opinion.
I have to say, his Sting's flying swimming trunks were rather funny.
Yes, yes.
Did you meet Frank Herbert?
Yes, I did.
Can you tell me a bit about Frank Herbert?
Yes. I met Frank. Frank was there for some time with his wife. Frank was a strange man, but he must have been. He wrote Dune, didn't he? I said to him once or twice, explain something or other to me, and he'd say, oh, look at the index, you'll find it all in there. So I said, no, but tell me what you think about it. And I don't think he could. I mean, he'd written the book, that was it, and he left the rest to his wife. Barbara, wasn't it, I think? And she'd done the index, and she'd done the epilogue, was it? And put it all down, who everyone was, and she was the one who knew exactly. He was a very clever man, I think a little difficult man, I think. Or shall I say, not on the same wavelength as I was, anyway.
Okay, sounds like there's some stories there. Did he and David work closely together, or, I mean, was David true to his vision of how it should be, do you think?
David was definitely true to his vision. I think he discussed it over and over again with Frank. In fact, I know he had, but he had the vision of it, and he stuck to that.
Okay. Now, what did you, when you finally saw the film, the finished film, what did you think?
I don't quite know how to answer that. Do you mind if I don't?
Sure. Okay. Okay, well, let me put it another way. How did you react to the reviews that the film got?
I thought some of them were very fair. There were one or two very good ones, weren't there?
Yes, there were.
I thought that it was fair comment. Most of them I thought were fair comment.
Okay.
Disappointingly so, of course, after all the work that had gone into it.
I mean, it was a phenomenally complicated story.
Yes.
Do you think it was overambitious to try and...
I do. I do, absolutely. It was... You couldn't. I mean... And then don't forget there were some things that were left out as well. Some things with the worm and that. No, I was very disappointed, actually.
Okay, but over time it's become a cult film.
Oh, I know.
And what do you think about that, how it's been...
Well, I think I must have been wrong, but I still have my opinion.
Okay. What do you think of what David Lynch has done since?
Well, I don't really know. Tell me exactly.
Sorry, can I start that again?
Yes.
My stomach did a
Oh, you
a
must
big
be
noise.
hungry, you poor thing.
Did you hear that?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Jump.
It sounded like one of the worms. So yeah,
Jump out.
so if I could just ask you what you think of David Lynch's work since Dune.
It's not, don't forget my age. It's not for my age group, is it now, honestly? I still think he's a brilliant man. It's not the sort of, he knows this very well because he's a great person, but I am not in love with his work.
Now, I have to ask you this because I've never met David Lynch. I am a massive fan of his films, but they're so dark, and
That's exactly it.